Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. As you know, on Monday, our officers and other emergency services personnel responded to a mass casualty event where 10 people were killed and 14 others were injured. Since that time, investigators from homicide, led by Detective Sergeant Graham Gibson, have been gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing surveillance video. They've also been working in partnership with the Office of the Chief Coroner to identify the victims. That process, as explained on Tuesday by Dr. Dirk Heyer, the Chief Coroner of Ontario, has been lengthy and, we know, frustrating to many involved. However, it is necessary to ensure the victims' identities were confirmed scientifically. Today, we can tell you that all victims have been identified and their families have been notified. I'm going to identify the victims 1 through 10, and following naming the victims, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Heyer for some comments. Victim number 1, Ji Hun Kim, 22 years, of Toronto. Victim number 2, So Hee Chung, 22 years, of Toronto. Victim number 3, Geraldine Brady, 83 years, from Toronto. Chol Min Kang, 45 years, Toronto. Anne-Marie D'Amico, 30 years, from Toronto. Betty Forsyth, 94 years, Toronto. Munir Nadjer, 85 years, of Toronto. Dorothy Sewell, 80 years, Toronto. Andrea Braddon, 33 years, from Woodbridge. Boitus Renuka Amarasinghe, 45 years, Toronto. Dirk, if you'd like to come up and provide some comments.
Thank you, Inspector. I think it's important to remember and to remind everybody of the sadness that comes with this tragedy, and I'd like to re-express the deep condolences that all of us feel for the families, for the friends, and for those that have suffered the tragic losses, and not to forget the community as well. I want to also express, on behalf of Ontario's death investigation system, our gratitude for the patients, for specifically the families, but also many others, while we did the work that we need to do. I stand here as a representative of a team that worked diligently and methodically over the past 4 days, hand in hand with the Toronto Police Service, as we undertook the work to scientifically confirm the identities of the 10 victims. But more importantly, I'd like to thank the families and friends who've been waiting for confirmation. I can't imagine how difficult the situation has been for them. I have had words with more than one family and heard their concerns and respected their concerns, and they have been nothing short of stoic. Just to summarize some of the information that the inspector talked about, the range of ages is between 22 and 94. And as I think you've recognized, there was 8 females and 2 males. There were 2 foreign nationals. One was a student from Korea who was studying here in Canada, and one was a man from Jordan who was visiting his family here in Canada. As I explained earlier this week, this was a very complex tragedy, continues to involve significant steps of investigation, and given the events of circumstances, we undertook scientific efforts to confirm and ensure all the proper identifications. Identifying the victims and investigating their deaths was our #1 priority. We needed to do the additional work to ensure there was no confusion or any potential additional grief that was already burdened by this tragedy. I'm confident that our experts have done a thorough and accurate work, and I commend them and commend the Toronto Police Service for their diligent work. Last night and today, our office, as well as the Toronto Police Service, have been contacting and speaking with all of the families to provide confirmation and answer their questions that they have about how their loved ones died. We wanted to make sure that they knew, and they were the first ones to know all of this information before today. At this point, I think, do you have any further questions, Inspector? No. I think that 2 of us are open up for questions.
No, I've got some.
Oh, you've got, sorry.
A couple
My
of
apologies.
Sorry. So just on behalf of the Toronto Police Service, we would like to offer our sincere condolences to all the victims and their families. With respect to the investigation, I can update you on a few things. As a result of speaking with witnesses, we have identified 2 additional victims that received injuries but were not transported from the scene on Monday. I can advise the accused will be charged with 2 more counts of attempt murder at his next court appearance. In response from the public has been overwhelming. Investigators have interviewed over 170 witnesses to date and have in excess of 100 interviews left to complete. I'd also like to thank the members of the public who have accessed the Toronto Police web portal. We currently have 100+ images that have been uploaded to that web portal. The cooperation from the businesses in and around our crime scene has been remarkable and allowed us to complete a very thorough video canvas around our large crime scene relatively efficiently. As a result of viewing video, speaking to witnesses, and consulting with the investigative team from Traffic Services, we can confirm the route driven by the accused. The accused commenced southbound Yonge Street at Hendon Avenue, which is 1 block north of Finch. He struck the southwest corner curb of Yonge Street and Churchill and entered back onto the roadway. Continued in the southbound lanes of Yonge Street. North of McKee, the van veered into the northbound lanes of Yonge Street. The van continued southbound in the northbound lanes and mounted the center median and continued southbound in the southbound lanes of Yonge Street. The van mounted the southwest curb of Yonge Street and Parkholme Avenue. The van then continued southbound on the sidewalk. It made a right turn into the laneway between 4980 and 4950 Yonge Street and continued westbound. It made a left turn onto southbound Beecroft Road and continued southbound on Beecroft through the intersection at Shepherd Avenue West. It made a left turn at Bogart Avenue and mounted the southwest curb and traveled along the south sidewalk. It made a right turn at Yonge Street and continued southbound on the west sidewalk of Yonge Street. It then made a right turn on Points Avenue and continued westbound on the north sidewalk of Points Avenue. It stopped approximately 50 meters west of Yonge Street before being engaged by and taken into custody by Constable Lamb. Lastly, I can tell you that the search warrant executed at the home of the accused has been completed, and investigators will now undertake to examine items seized from that address. Our work will continue as we look to move this case forward and secure a successful prosecution of the person now charged. Jack, if you want to join up here, we can take a few questions.
Well, you talked about, or earlier we've heard that some of the victims who survived were in critical condition. Do you have an update on their condition, and is there any chance that the number of dead could go up?
Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor. I know that some of the injured people do have significant injuries. I don't know what that means, and I don't know the prognosis.
Inspector, do you have any better sense of motive here? We've got a breakdown of 8 women, 2 men died. Any sense of that women were targeted in this? We
will continue to investigate and look at all the videos seized and see if that plays a factor in the investigation.
When do you expect the causes of death to be released? The causes of death, when do you expect those to be released?
We wouldn't be typically releasing the causes of death. This is an active criminal investigation, and this would not be something we would typically be releasing.
Will you be saying where they died along the route, the individual people?
That's part of the evidence and part for the prosecution. I won't be discussing that.
So that ballpark figure here, how many times did he get into the on the sidewalk? Because I tried following, I'm not super geographically inclined. How many times did he get on the
If
sidewalk?
I recall from what I just went through, he was on the southbound sidewalk for the majority of the time. He veered into northbound lanes, came back across the median to the southbound lanes, and then got on the sidewalk, turned west in the laneway, southbound on Beecroft, and then past Shepherd, back eastbound, and then onto Yonge Street.
So was that twice?
I think he's on the southbound sidewalk 2 different times and on the sidewalk of Points Avenue, but I'm not certain.
Well, the
Inspector
people
Paul,
hit on
the
the
other day
sidewalk.
it was talked about this Facebook post that was put up just before the attack happened.
Yes.
How important is that post in trying to determine the motive?
We are aware of that post, and the investigation into that post and what that post means is obviously part of our investigation.
Can you tell us what you seized from the house?
No, I can't.
What sorts of, was it electronics?
That goes into the evidence. I'm not going to discuss
Did
the
you get a
evidence.
driver's license?
I'm not aware of that.
Can you clarify 2 additional victims?
That's correct.
I wanted to identify on Monday? What was it?
They didn't get transported to the hospital, and they weren't at the scene when we first arrived. They've come to us as part of the investigation. I can advise that the two new victims are a 21-year-old male and a 67-year-old female.
What about the ages of the other injured? Do you have an age range for the injured?
Yeah, they range in age from 23 to 94, I believe. The injured? Sorry, that's the deceased. Sorry, that's the deceased.
Okay.
I do have that here. Just give me 1 second. 23 to 90.
23 to 90 for the injured? So,
And 22 to 94
Or
for the deaths.
yeah.
and 22 to 94
For the
deaths.
deceased.
And so that brings to 15 the number of the injured, is that right?
16.
The six, with the two new ones, 16.
So the additional charge of attempted murder had already been laid that Detective Sergeant Gibson had talked, because he was hit with 14 counts of attempted murder additionally.
Yes.
13.
Okay.
13.
13, sorry.
But there were 14 people injured.
Absolutely.
That 14th person, he still faces no charges for that.
Not yet.
So there's 3 new charges expected to be
Yes, that's correct.
So, okay, so that'll bring to 16
It'll
the
be
number of
16.
attempted murder
16 will be the
charges he's
total,
expected to
yes.
face, okay.
Doctor, what about can you speak to the steps that, the extraordinary steps, cautious steps that your office has taken to make sure that you got these identities correctly? Can you speak?
Yes. Once we had an idea of who the potential deceased persons were, we reached out to obtain dental records, if at all possible, or fingerprints if they were on record. And if those were not available, then we utilized other mechanisms, which may be x-rays of the person when they were alive, or potentially DNA. All of those modalities were utilized in this.
Just to get back to the path,
Yes.
from the minute that it first started to happen to the minute of the stop, how
Yes.
long was that rampage?
7 minutes. The distance-wise, I don't know.
Oh, okay, because we were told originally it was 7 minutes from the 911
One call from the first 911 call to the arrest
To
is
the
7
arrest.
minutes. Yes.
So do you know how long the actual
The
path
distance?
is?
I don't
No,
know.
no, no. I mean in length of time.
So the first
The
911 call came
fir-
in immediately.
Yeah, the first victim is hit almost immediately at near Yonge and Finch.
And all victims were on the sidewalk, is that right?
That's correct. I believe one was on the roadway.
Also, you said a little bit ago that there were 2 more charges expected at his next court date.
For the two new identified victims and the one.
3.
That's correct. When you said that you weren't aware of a driver's license, is it that you don't know if he has one, or you don't know?
I don't know. As part of, like, I'm not really embedded in the investigation, so I don't know.
Inspector, can you talk a little bit about the work that your investigators are going to be doing looking at his online activity? Obviously, there might be some conjecture that he was a part of an online group himself. Talk just a little bit about the work that's going on there.
Absolutely. All avenues with respect to the online investigation will be explored. Obviously, this investigation has been monitored and we're working collaboratively with the RCMP because of it. Where that investigation goes, it's too early to tell. We have a lot of evidence that we need to get through to see where that evidence takes us.
How is your RCMP helping in that capacity?
They've been working with us since the beginning.
So you said
And in what capacity, why would they get on board if it's mainly local?
We're just sharing information at this point.
you said that more than 170 witnesses to date have
Yes.
been interviewed. Would the bulk of these be eyewitnesses who actually saw what happened, would you say?
I would suggest they are.
Can you just describe what that process has been like for your investigators? Like it's a lot of trauma that is being relayed to them.
Yeah, so we have a victim liaison officer embedded with the investigators, and we have victim services working beside the investigators, and we have a lot of investigators from other units within Detective Command assisting to get those interviews done so that people aren't waiting to be interviewed. We can get through them quickly. It's a long process, but it's a 7-minute event, so the statements aren't, an hour and a half long.
Was the van rented on Hendon?
Yeah, can you talk about the rental van? Was it the suspect who rented the van, or was it someone else?
I'm not going to discuss that.
Can you say when it was rented?
No, I won't discuss that.
Inspector, clearly your training with Toronto Police was a great part of what contributed to the successful arrest of this suspect. Your use of force training, is that recognized outside of the Toronto? Is the Toronto Police training on use of force shared with other services?
I think our use of force training has developed significantly over the last 10 years. I'm not aware, I don't work at the Toronto Police Call, I'm not aware if it's shared with other services, but certainly the events that unfolded on Monday is a good example of how we are trained.
Can you clarify? So 8 of the victims were from Toronto. 2 are foreign. Can you identify who the 2 visitors were or tourists?
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
So they're not all from Toronto. There is one, I believe, from Woodbridge.
Woodbridge.
And the first person, Ms. Kim, was a Korean, a student who's living here from Korea. And Mr. Najar is a gentleman who is visiting from Jordan, visiting his family. Woodbridge was Andrea Braddon.
So back to the van and the route. So when you say it started on Hendon Avenue, is that from the moment he
Young and
rented-
Hendon.
Young and Hendon. Is that where he rented the van, or is that where?
That's where our investigation with the movements of the van start.
Okay. But it's the van. That's not like a rental
No,
location.
absolutely not.
So do you know where that was? Where did it come from?
I do, but I won't discuss that.
What do we know about the movements of the van before he got to that point?
I can tell you that we believe the van went from where it was rented to directly to Yonge Street.
Inspector Vaughn, do you believe that the accused went from his home in Richmond Hill to the van rental company, or was he somewhere?
I don't want to discuss that.
When you say you won't discuss who rented it, is there a possibility someone else was involved in this, or?
Not that we're aware of.
What's the RCMP's interest into this story? I know you told us that you're sharing information. Is there a protocol in place? Is there something a bit more sinister afoot than what could have been?
Not that we're aware of this time. Certainly the evidence that we have in this investigation does not meet the threshold for Section 83 of the Criminal Code, terrorism. But we are sharing our information back and forth.
And is that because they want to know about whether or not it meets that threshold, or do they have something else that they told you that they want to look at?
No. We're sharing information with them. They haven't shared information with us.
So is this just a matter of covering all avenues to make sure that you can get back to a point that this is just a Toronto police investigation or whatever it ends up being?
Absolutely. We have full carriage of the investigation at this point, and we're working with our partners at the RCMP.
What's required to meet the threshold of terrorism? I don't know, Section.
I don't know off my hand, but there's a whole bunch of specifics with respect to the terrorism section that relate to religion, ideologies, and stuff like that. And we haven't met that threshold.
Chief Saunders mentioned provincial partners as well. What provincial partners are at play here?
On the night of the event, we had LPP assisting us.
Just with the
Yes.
carriage of the crime scene, just
Yeah.
because it was such a big crime scene?
That's correct.
Okay, but so their involvement is essentially done at this point then, right?
That's correct.
We're dealing with Toronto and federal partners at this point.
That's correct.
Can you quantify the volume of surveillance video, dash cam video that's come forward? Like, is there any way to quantify with the number of hours?
I can't give you the number of hours or the number of pieces that we have. I know that on our web portal, we've had 100+ submissions on our web portal already. But with respect to the video that was seized from Yonge Street, you can imagine there's hundreds of businesses along Yonge Street. I don't know how many terabytes of information we have at this point.
Sir, how are your officers doing?
They're tired, but they're doing very well. I mean, this is why we do this job. We respond. We certainly take public safety as a priority. And we've had tons of support within our command and outside our command in divisional policing and with our partners. We have all the assets that we need. And the officers got some rest when they needed the rest. The first 48 hours was a long 48 hours. But obviously, we're doing well.
With regards to the victim identification and this horrific incident, this is unimaginable. Can you at all talk about the families and how they feel?
I haven't had direct contact with the families, but Dirk may have had more contact with the families. Maybe he can.
I don't think you can specify individual families, how they're reacting. Everybody will react differently. Everybody has suffered a terrible tragedy, a totally unexpected, unspeakable tragedy that is unimaginable to everybody. And essentially that's what I've heard from the coroners who have been speaking with the families, as well as myself, who I've also had opportunity to speak with more than one family. And Toronto Police have also been closely communicating back and forth, and it's pretty much the same sort of information from all. It's just unspeakable.
Doctor, how were you able to do autopsies on 10 victims? Did you have to bring in pathologists from afar, or did you use the local people? Can you
We plan for situations such as this, and unfortunately it's occurred, and our plan was instituted, and we carefully prepared and developed a team, and people had to work longer hours than they would have worked, but we used the staff that were present in our facility, and we made careful plans and did our work within our own capacity.
People were hired with families that were from outside the country. Did you need interpreters? Did you need special help from the feds? How do you manage that?
Yep.
I can advise that with the Korean nationals, we had a Korean officer embedded with our victim liaison officer to assist with all of that. from the start.
And what about the Jordanian?
Jordanian, I believe the family was in the city.
Yeah.
Coroner, people were found in Timmins in a car last weekend, still haven't been identified. When are we expecting to have identification of those cases?
So I can't speak specifically about those cases except to say that there are a number of complexities of those cases, and we were involved concurrently with this work, and there was investigation and work being done concurrently on both cases at the same time.
Has it slowed down, whatever happened, what happened here on Monday, has it slowed down your work in other cases a little?
I mean, I think it's all quantification of slowed down or not. I mean, we are carrying on our work. I have not been aware of a significant decrease or change or reduction in any of our work. So I don't believe it's been a significant factor. Obviously, it's significant in the fact that we had the work and the unfortunate tragedy that we had to respond to. But we work hard and we respond to tragedies in the most expeditious way in all cases, in all of the ways that we can. So I suspect if you asked, is it a little bit? Maybe. But the reality is it's not a significant change.
What about you, Inspector Bob? I mean, same sort of question. You guys have three of the biggest homicide investigations ever to hit Toronto happening at the same time. How has this been for your office dealing with the workload?
It's been a lot of work. It's been obviously a challenge, but we have sort of a whole of service approach and a lot of support from our staff superintendent, DEMQ, where we have available to us investigators from all other specialized units and officers from the field as well to assist.
After the bus crash, there was a mix-up in the identification of 2 of the victims. Did that mistake factor into how long it took to release the names today?
No, in fact, we approach a complex fatality such as this we always plan to approach a complex fatality such as this situation on Yonge Street in the manner that we did. So this is the approach we would have taken if, God forbid, Humboldt had or hadn't happened. This is our approach when there's complexities in a death investigation, when there's multiple deaths. We then do invoke our plans, and our plans will involve scientific confirmation of the identification because of the fact that there's a potential for confusion given the traumatic injuries, the number of people that are alive and the number of people that are deceased, and the trauma of the whole event can lead to some confusion. So we are very cautious and careful and methodical and recognizing it does take time. And it's always balancing off the desire, and maybe that's the wrong word, the wish for families to understand whether their loved ones were involved or not. But we're always very careful and try to provide the families as much information as quickly as we can, while yet recognizing the importance of ensuring we do the best work possible to give the best answers.
Are you able to say, I mean, with most of these victims, were you able to tell the families from the beginning, like, look, it's not looking good, but we still have to check off these boxes before we can say definitively?
So we don't check off boxes. I'm sorry to be responding that way, but we work carefully and methodically to ensure that we get the best answers to the families. And what we did is when we believed it may be one of their loved ones, we did reach out to them with the Toronto Police Service. In fact, Toronto Police Service was the primary reach out in most of the situations, and they would say, we believe your loved one may have passed, and then asked for potential avenues to do the scientific confirmation, which is the dental x-rays. Because obviously we have to have knowledge of who the person might be to be able to seek the records to be able to do the comparison. But then we let the families know what our plans were and essentially provided a structured information sharing, clearly individualized to each person. And the Toronto Police Service and myself and the coroners that were involved specifically developed information sharing plans for the families so that everybody had an opportunity to understand what was occurring.
Now that we know who these victims are, can either of you paint a picture for us, a bit of a picture of what they were doing? Were these people that were just out walking in their own neighborhood, who were on their lunch break from work? Like, have we been able to paint that sort of picture?
We would have to go back and talk to the investigators and talk about what they said and what the witnesses said those people were doing. Some of the elderly people that were struck and killed may have come from an old age home that was in the vicinity. I can't confirm that. But the other people that were walking on the street, I can't comment on what they were doing there.
Sorry, Brian's question was asked, but do you know how many of the victims surviving are still in hospital?
I believe there's been two of them released.
And how many still in hospital?
12.
12 still in hospital.
Inspector, maybe this is not the right person, maybe you're not the right person to ask this question to, but as the senior officer in homicide, what does this case mean for Toronto Police as far as changing the way we secure our city and make it safer? Or can we prevent something like this from happening again? Or is there, what can we do?
We have a plan in place for an event like this. We'd hope we never have to use it. It was mobilized on Monday, and the reaction was phenomenal. I think that we had support of uniformed personnel, investigative personnel, and things were handled very, very well. From a homicide perspective, the investigation of Monday's event obviously included the use of traffic services, which was a big portion of the investigation. So that was an assistance to us as well.
But can we do something now as a result of what happened to make our city safer, to protect ourselves from this happening again?
We're always looking at ways to make our city safer and come up with plans to make sure that we're safe.
We're seeing more pylons, more concrete barriers going up, but at what point can you make it, have we already done something as a result? I mean, we've seen it Maple Leaf Square, for example, but what else are we going to be seeing in the weeks and months to come?
I think the Toronto Police Service has several plans in place with respect to our security. What you see around major events and stuff might not be as a result of information that there's anything happening in Toronto, but it's a result of what's happening worldwide. And we've taken those steps and making those efforts to keep our people safe.
Now, how would you call that plan? Is there a name for that plan? Is there a protocol of some sort? How would we call that amongst ourselves?
Our plan is called the Extreme Event Plan.
Extreme Event Plan. Yeah. And the cement barriers that were put in front of Union Station, is that part of that plan as well?
No.
So it's more a city-wide response than a police response?
That's correct.
What's your impression of,
Sorry, can I interrupt? This isn't about that, this is about this investigation.
I understand.
Other questions can be addressed to other
No reason, no reason. Would you know, as part of the police effort, when those barriers are going to come off, or?
I'm not aware of that.
Has there been any change to the next court appearance for Manassi? And you mentioned these extra charges. Is he going to get called in earlier, or is it still that May?
It's May 10th, 301 court.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for attending.